Hey guys, welcome back to another video of the series What If Naruto Was a Member of X-Men, and in this series you will get to know how Naruto was captured by Apocalypse, was experimented on, and then he was rescued by X-Men team, and then he got a really good home, adopted parents, and many other things where he grew up, and then he went to the Konoha village to make trouble and other things. So if you like this kind of thing, and what about the previous episode, if you haven't checked out them, just check out them. There is a link in the description, or you can just click on the I button where you can also find the playlist, or you can just go to the playlist section. If you are new on the channel, subscribe and don't forget to check out the playlist section. I'm telling you once more, just please check out the playlist section. There are many different kind of what if and fanfic series. You will surely love it. So without any more delay, let's begin today's episode.
As a guest. I had originally only wanted you since you and those special abilities of your have caught my eye, but I am always looking for new little lab rats and I think this little girl would make a fine one. Now if you don't want the girl to die you will go back and do as the letter said. You have 1 hour and don't try calling for help or do anything suspicious. I have you being watched even now by my summons. Wait, how do you know about me and how do you know how to use this radio? The third paled and said, My god, Orochimaru has Tenten and is using her to get Echo. I have to send a team after them. Rogue said, That's why we're here. We want to know exactly where he was sent on his mission as well as who this cash person is so we can rescue them and kill this Orochimaru fellow. The third looked at the people in the office and said, I am sorry but. Xavier said, Storm, I want you, Wolverine, Gambit, Rogue, Jean, and Magneto to head out taking the X-Jet and follow Echo's Skyhopper transponder. Cyclops, Jubilee, Iceman, I want you to all to go around the village and get any supplies we will need in the mansion for the time being. Beast, Nightcrawler and I will stay at the mansion while trying to getting everything ready for your return as well as trying to help find Echo. Whatever has happened on the mission is blocking his mental powers and I am currently unable to contract him, meaning he is either passed out or someone has found a way to neutralize them. Either option is extremely bad. We are going to stay here until this matter is resolved. If you would like to send a team with Storm's team then I would suggest getting them here in an hour. Go. As they all turned and left except Xavier. The third looked at him and said, What are you doing? Xavier said, I know you were going to say that you can't tell us because he is a ninja of your village, but he is also an X-Men and in the eyes of your laws we are nothing but civilians who are sending out our own search party for a member of our family. You can either help us or go on your own, but that will take longer than our methods and as time is of the essence it could mean life and death for Echo and Cash. If you want to send anyone after them to help then have them at our mansion in less than an hour or they will be left behind. As he turned his chair and floated away. The third frowned and thought, I hate it but he's right, we don't have time to argue right now. As he quickly began getting the people he wanted. An hour later Nightcrawler appeared outside of the house shocking everyone and he said, I'm Nightcrawler. I need you all to hold hands and one of you to touch my arm and I can get you all to the X-Jet fast. Kakashi, who was standing there, said, You heard him, do it. Anko looked at Kakashi and said, You sure, Kakashi? Kakashi said, Fine, I am leaving without you all. I recognize his powers as the same as Echo, so I assume he's taking us to the underground base. As he grabbed Nightcrawler's arm as Nightcrawler nods. Asuma threw a cigarette away, walked over and grabbed Kakashi's hand as he grabbed Kurenai. Anko sighed and grabbed Kurenai's arm and they disappeared only to reappear in a huge room and Beast, who was working some controls, said, Ah, our most honored and humbled guest. Forgive my frankness but please climb the ramp to the black jet where the rest of your team is already waiting. Anko looked at him and was about to say something when Kakashi asked, Has there been any word on Echo or Cash? Beast looked at him and said, Not since the initial transmission that is constantly repeating between Echo and this Orochimaru guy. At the name of Orochimaru, Anko cracked her knuckles and said, let's go. I got a snake to kill. As she walked to the ramp, Kakashi following close behind. Asuma raised an eyebrow and asked, "What's up with Kakashi? He seems more determined than I have ever seen him." The fact he told Sasuke to piss the fuck off was amusing while disturbing. Kurenai nods as she climbed on the jet and thought back. Flashback. Asuma, Anko, and Kurenai were all running toward the Memorial Stone training ground where Kakashi always trained, hoping to find him. Earlier the three had been called into the Hokage office and told that the two-man team of Echo and someone named Cash had run into Orochimaru and are believed to be held prisoner. They were now trying to find Kakashi. As they landed in the field, Kakashi raised an eyebrow as he looked up from his book as Sasuke was doing a Kaden jutsu. Kakashi asked, "What's up?" Asuma said, "We got a mission, S-rank search and rescue. A two-man team has ran into an S-class missing nin and one has been confirmed captured and the other is believed to be captured. We are to meet up in around 20 minutes at Echo's place where we are supposed to meet the rest of our team." The Hokage said, "Be prepared for full combat." Kakashi stood up, putting his book away as he got a bad feeling in his stomach and asked, "Who are the two-man team and who's the missing nin?" Kurenai said, "It's Echo and someone named Cash. As for the missing nin," Anko said, "it's Orochimaru." Kakashi yelled, "Sasuke, training's cancelled until further notice." Sasuke looked at Kakashi and said, "What, why?" "It's that loser Echo's fault that him and his teammate are captured. They're both a couple of nobodies anyways." What happened next shocked everyone as Kakashi slammed Sasuke into a tree with his fist under his ribcage as everyone heard several ribs break and Sasuke coughing up blood and said while releasing massive amounts of ki, "Shut the fuck up, you spoil little bastard. So what if you brother killed you clan? If this is the way you treat others, then I think he left too many alive. After I get back I am resigning as you sensei, so go home, cry your eyes out about Itachi, jerk yourself off while mentally cheering yourself on or whatever you need to do, so fucking piss off." As he turned to the others who were shocked and said, "I will meet you there," as he left in a swirl of leaves. Asuma walked over and checked on Sasuke and said, "I will drop him off at the hospital and meet you there." End flashback. As they got on board they saw 3 women and 3 men all on board, and one who had a phoenix on her chest said, "Please sit down and hold on. The seats will secure you in for the ride." Kakashi asked, "When was the last time you heard from them?" Jean said, "Late last evening. We would have been here sooner but we had to wait for Magneto to arrive at our place before we could get here." Asuma sat down and asked, "Who are you all?" Storm said, "We will discuss it once we are airborne." "Is everyone sitting down?" As she looked back, Jean said, "Yeah." Anko asked, "What do you mean airborne?" Magneto said, "If I know Echo then I say a lot of windows have recently been broken." Asuma said, "Yeah, there was a loud boom and windows broke all over the village." "Are you saying Echo was the one who caused that?" Rogue said, "Yeah, he has a thing about going supersonic on takeoff. He used to do it when landing also until we compromised. Anyways, let's go. We got to save my son." Storm said, "Right, hold on." As suddenly everyone felt the jet lift off as they slowly flew out of the hangar bay as days before, with the land rising and animals fleeing. As the Konoha ninja all sat with wide eyes as they were literally going into air, and they turned and saw they were above the village by about 100 feet. Gambit said, "Let's go already." And with that everyone felt as the jet took off, flying away fast. Asuma gaped and asked, "How fast are we moving?" Storm said, "Around 210 miles per hour." After everyone was done gaping at that, Magneto got up and said, "You can move around but don't touch anything," as he got up and moved over to where Jean was. Asuma said, "You said you would tell us who you were once we were airborne." Storm touched some controls and stood up and said, "It's on autopilot. My code name is Storm, leader of this team. The woman beside me is Rogue, the man behind her is her fiancé Gambit, the woman at the computer over there is Phoenix, and the man behind her is Magneto. The man who is pacing a hole in the floor in Wolverine, as she saw Logan walking back and forward. Asuma said, I am Asuma, current leader of our team. Beside me is Kurenai, the woman in the trenchcoat is Anko, and the man Thayer is. Jean said, Hitaki Kakashi. Making everyone look at her. Kakashi asked, how did you know? Jean said, you have a level security clearance at the mansion. I pulled up the info on who had clearance to try and figure out who this Cash person is, and I found it. As a screen popped up on the side showing everyone what she looked like as Jean read, codename Cash. She's the same age as Echo, brown hair and brown eyes. Also known as the weapon mistress of Konoha. It seems she's recently been injured in the danger room and required medical attention. Not pregnant. All blood test came back clear for infections. That's good. Well, that's interesting. Kakashi said. What? Jean said. Echo put X-level restrictions on some information about Cash. It's odd that he would do that, but apparently not even Cash has access to that info. Anko said. What kind of crap is that? Why does he have access to information that she doesn't? Kakashi said. Calm down, Anko. I know what they're talking about since I was the one who informed Echo of it. Kurenai looked at Kakashi and said, why would you give someone else information on a genin Kakashi? Kakashi sighed and said, because she is my daughter. Making all the Konoha nins wide-eyed. Anko said, daughter, but how? Kakashi sighed and said, long story short, I was in Anbu. She was born shortly before the Kyuubi attack. Her mother passed away due to complications, and since her godparents, Echo's parents, passed away during the Kyuubi attack, and I was constantly out of the village on missions afterwards, I had no one to trust, so I put her up for adoption. I never told her because I am a failure as a father. The only reason I told Echo was because I was with them during a conversation when it came up, and he used his unique abilities to find out the truth and asked me about it later. Asuma looked at Kakashi sadly and said, you don't have to explain it to us, Kakashi. We understand. Anko said, wait, if this Gaki's parents died, then you're his adopted mother. As she looked at Rogue. Rogue said, yeah, either of you find anything yet? Magneto said, no. Jean said, I am picking up something but barely. It's just pain. It's Echo, but something is blocking his powers for the most part, so I know he's alive. Kurenai asked, how can you know that? Jean said, I'm telepathic. I can read other people's minds like Echo can, but I am's greatly stronger. Kurenai frowned when she heard this and asked, what can the rest of you do? Magneto frowned and said, something's wrong. Everyone turned to him and Rogue asked, what? Magneto said, if I did not know better, I would swear I was picking up large quantities of adamantium. Jean asked, where? Magneto said, an island west of where we are heading. As he turned and walked to the rear of the jet and said, I am going to investigate. As he stepped inside a boat, and an alarm sounded inside the jet as it completely stopped, scaring the Konoha nins for a moment, and Anko said, what did he mean he's going to investigate, and why did he stop? Just then they saw Magneto flying away from the X-jet, and it took off like a bullet again, and Jean said, damn it, Magneto, we could have stopped the jet for you to get out instead of stopping it yourself. Anko stuttered, he can fly. Rogue said, if we don't find him on this island we're heading to, I say we follow Magneto. Storm said, agreed. Asuma said, wait, what's this atom stuff he was talking about, and why did he feel it was more important than rescuing those two we are trying to save? What's so important about him that you all would wait for him? Wolverine extended his claws, drawing everyone's attention, and said, these claws are made of adamantium. The only two people on this entire planet who should have this metal is me and the kid. This metal is not natural. It is created by combining multiple other metals that your world just does not have. You ask what is so important about Magneto to wait for him is because him and Echo are the only two who can feel this stuff from several miles away because of their magnetic abilities. If he says that adamantium is in large quantities here, there are only two options I can think of how that is possible, and both are not pretty. As he withdrew his claws, Anko licked her lips and said, "Remind me to have you over for some fun sometime." As Magneto was flying toward the island, he saw a boat with two men in it who had a fishing net, and he saw in the fishing net was a mutant. Magneto narrowed his eyes as he looked down on this as the two men dragged her on board the ship and one proceeded to kick the girl. Magneto descended toward the men and said, "I must say, what do I find here but more pain and chaos to those who are different?" Drawing all three people's attention. One of the men looked around until he saw Magneto in the air as he heard the voice and said, "Who the hell are you?" Magneto said, "That depends. I am either your executioner or your hero, depending on which one of the three you are is, which case I will follow." The other man pulled out a kunai and said, "I am not scared of you. Why don't you come down here and fight me?" Magento said, "If I were to fight you, then I would consider you my equal. As a lowly human, I do not. Now die." The kunai in the mon's neck flew up and went through the mon's neck and into his brain. The other man, seeing his partner die, quickly began hand signs, and Magneto raised his hand and the net that was holding the girl flew off of her and went through the second man, cutting him into little chunks. The girl crawled backwards away from Magneto as he landed and said quietly, "Please don't hurt me." Magneto said, "There is no need to fear me, child. I am here to help you. Tell me, what is your name?" The girl looked at him a moment and said, "Isarabi." Magneto nodded and looked at the girl and then narrowed his eyes as he noticed something sticking out of her pocket and said, "Tell me, where did you get this?" As a metal holster with an X on the side that Magneto recognized as Naruto card holder floated up out of her pocket. Isarabi said, "I found it." Magneto said, "Don't lie to me, girl. Where is the boy who owned this?" Isarabi looked scared by the glare Magneto was giving her and said, "All right. He's being held captured by Dr. Amachi. He's got him and this girl in his lab." Magneto anger started to boil and said, "Tell me everything. Where? Who? What?" Isarabi pointed to the island where Magneto was heading and said, "He's the one who did this to me. I was trying to escape when these men captured me again. He works for Orochimaru. They were getting ready to experiment on both him and the girl. He had this strange collar with writing on the side of it around the boy's neck. There was also this controller Orochimaru gave me to give to the doctor before he left, but I threw it in the cave and ran away to escape. That's all I know. Please don't kill me." As she cowered in the corner, Magneto said, "You say this collar was around the boy's neck. What condition was the boy in?" Isarabi said, He was tied down and passed out. I swear that's all I know. I don't know what they did with the girl since I only saw her once when they first brought her there." Magneto looked at the girl and said, "You are going to do as I say. That control you talked about. I want you to go and retrieve it and bring it to me here. If you don't, I will kill you. Now go." Isarabi looked scared and jumped in the water and began to swim toward the island. Magneto thought, "A mutant slave collar. It can't be, but that is what it sounds like. If it is, then that explains why we can't detect him very well." When Isarabi got back to the cave, she heard screaming. She went and snuck around until she could see inside the room where Amachi was looking with glee on his face at a glass tank with liquid metal moving around inside of it, and Naruto was still tied to a table and awake. Naruto was screaming, "When I get free, I am going to kill you very slowly. I am going to break every bone in your body, rip your spine out and shove it through your stomach as I set you skin on fire, and then I will pull the skin off and freeze the skin and pull it off as I feed it to you, and I will," as he screamed like a raving lunatic. Isarabi covered her ears and looked at him and went wide-eyed at what she saw. It scared her to the core, so she turned and began to run, only stopping long enough to find the controller as she left as quick as possible. Amachi turned and glared at Naruto and said, Do shut up, boy. I must admit you are very interesting, but my new pet will be even interesting if it survives, that is. I was first surprised when I saw that your hand was made out of metal and I could not figure out how to break a sample off, but when I looked under it with a microscope I was very surprised to find mechanical reproducing cells made out of the metal. At first I thought that this must have been recently added to you, but by the fact the wound that is around where your hand was is several years old, I would say that this would have to be done way before that, so it made me wonder how could you grow normally with the metal. Then it dawned on me. Those mechanical cell adapted with your body, allowing your bone structure to grow. After I found that it was simple to go and trick the cells into believing that your body was growing Aegean into a protein culture where it started to multiply, and now I have this. As he motioned toward the huge tank of liquid metal. Naruto asked, "Where is Cash? Where is she?" Amachi snickered and said, "You really don't know, boy. I would have assumed you already figured it out. My new pet, the one that is in that tank, is Cash." Naruto looked at the tank and saw the figure of Tenten inside the tank barely, and he screamed, "Tenten, no. I will kill you for what you have done to her." As something inside of Naruto snapped. As Isarabi swam back to the boat where Magneto was, she saw a strange-looking object beside the boat in the water, and she saw several people on top of it, and Magneto said, "Well, do you have it?" Isarabi nods and said, "Yes. I got it and got out quick. I think Amachi is killing him slowly." Everyone looked at the girl except Rogue, who flew over grabbing her and pulling her out of the water and said, "Tell me now what you mean." Isarabi said, "His hand. The flesh is completely gone from it and it was a strange looking metal on the bones, and then there was some kind of tank that had the same color metal in it, but it was moving. I swear I saw something inside the tank, but the boys' screams, they were terrifying. Please don't kill me. I did as you told me." In a scared voice. Rogue set the girl down on the boat and said, "We won't hurt you, girl. I'm sorry, but he's my son. Now where is that remote you mentioned?" Isarabi reached into her pocket and pulled it out, and all the mutants paled at the sight of it, and Wolverine said, "It can't be." Kakashi looked at him and asked, "What?" Gambit said, "It's a mutant slave collar control. Anyone who has the collar on can be tortured, killed, or had all of their powers taken away by it. It's very painful. This is bad." Rogue took the control and said, "I hope we don't have a repeat of Geonosis," as she prepared to shut it off. Asuma asked, "What do you mean?" Gambit said, "Don't worry about it. Turn it off so we can get him out of there." Rogue nods and pushed the off button. Inside the lab, Naruto was on the table when he suddenly felt the control collar turn off as his mental powers returned. He thought, "Tenten, can you hear me? Are you still alive?" Tenten thought, "Naruto, please, it hurts, please help me." As she screamed mentally in pain. Naruto closed his eyes, and then Amachi saw Orochimaru walk in, and Amachi said, "Orochimaru, you're back early, is everything okay?" Orochimaru said, "Yes, doctor, I just came to take the boy with me. I will leave the girl here for you to play with, so release him. As long as I have this, he won't be a problem." Amachi said, "Yes, Orochimaru," as he walked over and freed Naruto, who fell to the ground. Orochimaru said, "Release the tags on his as well, but leave the collar. I don't want to have to carry him." Amachi said, "Yes, of course, Orochimaru," as he moved over and pulled the 5 tags off. The moment they were gone, Orochimaru vanished and Naruto stabbed Amachi in the ankles, and he smiled and said, "Oh yes, I told you I would have my revenge, but first to take care of you, Tenten." As he looked at the metal inside of the tank and controlled it to shatter and move away toward where he could sense Magneto along with Tenten. Outside, the X-Men were moving toward the island when a huge metal glob of liquid came out and stopped in front of them and slowly took the form of Naruto, and it said, "Take this girl and go. I don't know what has happened to her, but please go. I will be along shortly." Magneto flew over and grabbed the girl and frowned and said, "We need to get her to the mansion fast or she will die." As he flew, Went took control of the metal that was flying and formed a ball around him, and Tenten and both shot off toward Konoha at incredible speeds. Kakashi said, "What of Echo?" Jean grimaced and said, "He's no longer Echo." Anko asked, "What do you mean?" Just then the sky began to darken over the island as the island began to float up out of the ocean. Kurenai asked, "What's going on?" Jean said, "It's him. He's returned." Inside the island, as it began to float, Amachi was crawling away with fear in his eyes as Naruto startled forward, saying, "I told you I would kill you. And I will do it very painfully." As he reached out and grabbed Amachi's left thumb and froze it solid before snapping it off as Amachi began to scream. Naruto smiled evilly and said, "Oh, that was too quick." As he stopped, and creaking and breaking sound was heard around the room as tiny little senbons formed out of metal in the air, and one shot out and hit Amachi's skin, and he cried out as each second a new one would fly into him, but only deep enough to cut the skin, never becoming life-threatening. "With the X-Men?" Anko asked. "Him who?" Jean said, "Maelstrom." Kakashi asked, "You mean Naruto?" Rogue said, "No, right now he is Maelstrom." Asuma frowned and said, "So this Echo kid has multiple personalities or something?" Jean said, "In a simple term, yes." Kakashi asked, "But why are you all acting scared right now? I mean, what is the difference between his personalities?" Rogue said, "It starts back the day when the Sandaime came after we rescued Echo. Professor X talked the Thid into going and leaving him with us to help him with his new powers. The third agreed, but after he left that day he closed himself off from everyone. He would only answer with one-word answers and do only what we asked. Finally, after 2 years we were able to get him back together enough where he opened up to us. It was tough, but over the next 5 years he turned into a normal mutant. Then came Geonosis." Asuma said, "You all talk about this place Geonosis in fear. What happened there? Why are you afraid of it?" As he looked at them. Back inside the island, Naruto laughed as he carved and peeled pieces of flesh off of Amachi's body, who was screaming in constant pain before he would either freeze it or burn the skin on each strip he pulled off, making a checkerboard pattern in flesh. Outside, Jean looked at the island and said, "Geonosis was an island where they claimed mutants could come and live without fear of being hated or persecuted for being different. The professor thought it was too good to be true because up to then it had been a constant battle for survival. The professor decided to send a team there as tourist undercover to see if it was real." Storm said, "I was the leader of the team. My teammates were Rouge, Gambit, Wolverine, and Echo. Gambit and Rouge went in as a family, and Wolverine and I went in as a couple. We got through the airport security and got to a hotel with 2 separate rooms. Everything seemed to be real the first day, and that night when we went to sleep our rooms had been rigged with knockout gas. When we awoke we all had been moved to prison camps and had slave collars on. It turned out the government of the island wanted a slave labor force to build sentinels, mutant hunting and extermination machines. We worked for 3 days with around 2,000 other mutants who had came to the island not finding any way to escape. Then Echo and Wolverine came up with a plan. Their metal claws and blades are not actual powers, so they could still use them. They broke free one night, but security found out within 10 minutes and started to look for them. Inside the island, which was now a mile high in the air, Amachi would have continued to scream under the torture, but Naruto had done pulled his tongue out and burned and froze the inside of his mouth to silence him and keep from bleeding to death, as he then used a senbon to pin Amachi's tongue to his own ass. Outside, Wolverine said, "Echo saw that the security was getting close, and if we could not get a message to the X-Men, then the Sentinels would be finished and all mutants would soon be exterminated, so he told me to go on ahead while he drew Sukati away. I cut his collar off and he cut mine off, and he flew into the air and began making fires to building and other things to draw everyone's attention. He fought for a while until around 30 Sentinels came and was able to capture him. I had, after several hours of looking, finally found a radio and was able to call for help. I then took out a patrol guard and took his cloths and went to sneak back into the holding area so I could try to find a way to free the other mutants. Gambit said. While he was doing that, the head military man on the island came and had all of us brought forward so he could make an example of what happened when we tried to revolt. He had sentinels hold him as well as putting on a new slave collar, but this one was different. It amplified pain and neutralized any mutant power. Echo's healing abilities are actually not a mutant power. Anyways, as we were all watching, he had a sentinel burn Echo's hand off, making everyone gasp. Kakashi said. So that's what happened to it. Rogue said. You don't understand. Echo's bones are completely made out of metal like Wolverine's, which is indestructible. The problem is his healing factor kicked in and started to heal his hand. Echo had screamed out in pain because of it being amplified. The leader got pissed when the skin started to regrow, so he had it blown off again, and again, and again. Over 5 hours we watched as his hand continued to grow, and we could not do anything since we were all being held prisoner with sentinels standing guard ready to kill us. Finally the leader had enough, so he sent one of his aide to go and get a special hydraulic coolant for the sentinels. He then had a sentinel go for 10 minutes, never ending, destroying the hand, and finally the metal started to warm up, and when it ended he shoved Echo's hand into the coolant, killing all the cells in his hand and making it unable to regrow. It was at that moment Echo snapped. It was when all the dark hatred he has as a child living in Konoha, and all the hatred he had for Apocalypse and the hatred he had for the Sandaime for leaving him, came back and mixed with the hatred he had for the leader and Geonosis. Jean said. It was shortly after this point where the X-Men arrived along with the Brotherhood, who also intercepted the message, and we attacked. Wolverine had finally found the man who had the slave controller and destroyed it, freeing everyone. The mutants instantly attacked, but it only lasted for about 2 minutes when it happened. Inside the islands, Naruto had picked up whimpering body of Amachi, and he looked him in the eyes and said, I told you I would show you your death. As he reached out and pulled one of the eyeballs out and shoved it into Amachi's mouth before he turned him around and shoved his metal hand into the back of Amachi and grabbed his spine and yanked it out of his back and said, I was told once the brain can live for several moments without the body. Now live forever. As he froze the mont's brain and threw it against a wall where it stabbed into the wall, and he walked out of the door and down the hallway to the outside. Back outside, the wind picked up and lightning started to strike the island constantly. Everyone was scared by what they were seeing as well as the story they were hearing. Gambit said. Echo started to laugh, a sickening, sinister laugh. The sky began to darken as it is now. Flaming ice began raining from the sky. Metal started to fly everywhere. Jean said. I used my powers along with Magneto to form a protective barrier around all the mutants. Rogue said. He flew into the air as the entire island began to fly into the air like this one is, but it was 10 times larger. He laughed at the destruction as the wind picked up. Everywhere you turned, anyone who was outside of the shield was dying painfully, but it wasn't enough. He began slipping through the humans and the sentinels with his wrist blades out. Gambit said. In the history books of your village that we have read, you claim Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage, had the title of the Yellow Flash for his ability to appear and kill in a second with kunais. That day his son continued the legacy. Kurenai went wide-eyed along with Anko and Asuma, and she said, his son, you mean that Echo is? Kakashi said. Echo's real name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, former Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune and adopted son of Rogue here. Just then a figure could be seen flying away from the island as flaming hail could be seen hitting the island, turning everything on top to ash. Jean said. Naruto attack lasted exactly 23 minutes. He killed every normal human on the island and every sentinel. After it was over, he broke the island into 10 pieces and had 9 of them fly into the ocean. He then had the last piece where we were fly the short distance to the mainland and land. At that moment he let out a mental cry and passed out from exhaustion. When we got him back home, the professor and I went into his mind and locked the other personality away with his help. We hoped it would never happen again, so we taught him how to suppress his darker half. Word quickly spread about the destruction of the island of Geonosis. Only those mutants on the island that day saw who it was that did the actual destruction, and all of them claimed him as a hero. The UN quickly called it an act of terrorism, and when the bodies that floated in the sea and those on the piece of island we were on was counted, it was over 7,000 deaths, all blamed on him. Since they never knew who he was, and by the description they named him Maelstrom, the super mutant terrorist. That is who is up there now. Not Echo, not Naruto, but Maelstrom. The mutant who only has one thought on his mind: revenge. As everyone watched, the island exploded and rained down into the ocean, and laughter could be heard for several minutes until crying could be heard. Rogue at this time began to fly up to him and put her arms around him and held him while whispering, "It's going to be okay. Shh, it's going to be okay," for several minutes until he passed out. She then slowly descended and landed with the others and said, "He's out, and probably won't be up for a while." Asuma looked at him with pity and fear and said, "We should head back." "What about her?" Looking at the girl everyone ignored for the most part. Jean said, "We will take her with us. Come on, child. You're safe now." Isarabi looked scared but nods and slowly enters the plane with the others while Kakashi thinks, "I hope you are alright, Tenten. I promise after this I will tell you the truth." It's been 3 weeks since the day the rescue team arrived back in Konoha. The report the Hokage received was not what he was expecting. He classified all information SS rank secret, and none of the Konoha nins were to repeat what happened under penalty of death. Naruto has been asleep the entire time, mentally and physically empty. Sasuke was still in the hospital from his injuries thanks to Kakashi. Currently is still passing blood in his urine. Kakashi has been put on leave, but he has not been seen since the day they returned in Konoha. Enko and Wolverine have been drinking together. Gambit and Rogue have been by Naruto's side every moment available. As for Tenten, well, that is interesting to say the least. Flashback. Tenten lay in a bed with several medical machines running to her as well as IVs hooked to her. Currently the room was dark, with Kakashi sitting in chair beside her bed sleeping, with the beeping of the machine the only noise that could be heard. A figure could be seen standing on the other side of her bed holding her hand, and Kakashi slowly awoke and looked at the person and asked, "Who are you?" as he was prepared to defend her. The man turned and said, "Hello, Kakashi. I am called Reload. Don't worry. Cash will be fine and awake by tomorrow." Kakashi frowned and asked, "How can you be sure?" Reload said, "I know because it is my place to know. She will awake, but she won't come out unchanged. Under her skin is now living metal. It looks normal, feels normal, but if you look." As he tapped her skin with a piece of metal, and Kakashi could hear the sound of metal on metal, and he frowned and said, "Will she really be okay?" Reload smiled and said, "Yeah. Think of it as body armor under the skin. Weapons can cut her skin, but they will never be able to go past the skin to harm the organs inside. She will also have other benefits from this, but what I can't tell you. She will have to be trained to use it as well, and the only ones who can train her properly will be the X-Men. I must be going. Do me a favor, and when you go to tell her the truth, give her this scroll." As he handed Kakashi a scroll. Kakashi asked, "What is it?" Reload pushed a button on his wrist and a portal appeared and said, "It's a letter from her mother Rin before she died." As he stepped inside and disappeared. Kakashi went wide-eyed and looked at the scroll. Just then Jean walked in and said, "Kakashi, was there anyone else in here besides you and her?" Kakashi said, "Yeah, some guy named Reload." Jean frowned and said, "I see, what did he want?" Kakashi said, "He told me a little about what will happen to her now, and also told me to give her this scroll. He claims it's from Tenten's mother." "How is that possible?" Jean leaned against the wall and said, "You heard about the time travel thing in between our worlds, right?" Kakashi nods and Jean said, "Reload is from 23 years in the future from what I was told by Cable, who is also from that time." We really don't know much about him except when he showed up once in our future. What we do know is he's deadly in a fight. Kakashi frowns and said. Then why was he here? Why was he interested in my daughter? Jean said. I don't know. He also seems interested in Naruto as well, but why only he knows. I could make theories, but most of them go from plausible to comical. Anyways, what did he say about her? Kakashi said. He told me that she now has living metal underneath her skin. Weapons will be able to cut her skin but won't be able to get to the organs. He said she would have other abilities, but what he wouldn't say. He told me that the only ones who would be able to teach her right are the X-Men. Jean sighed and said, same as what I already determined. I know one other thing though. Kakashi asked. What's that? Jean said. It's bloodline. Kakashi went wide-eyed and asked. What do you mean? Jean said. The cells that created the living metal were originally created from Naruto's body. Somehow the guy who experimented on them was able to reproduce one and they self-multiplied. They have the genetic code for the metal bonding as well as his healing factor built into them. That means she will heal any wounds faster as well. Her monthly hit also while she has been out, but I was expecting that since I had the data on it in the computer already from when she was treated here. I had the medic droids test the cells of it and discovered that it has rewrote her genetic code to where any children she has will have her abilities as well, but to what extent is unknown. They could be weaker or stronger depending on who the father is and what his genetic sequence is. The good news is this though. The metal that it is composed of is not just any weak metal. It's the same thing as Wolverine and Naruto's, which means it will be nearly indestructible. Kakashi frowned and said, I thought the metal would only get that strong once it was heated and set. Jean said, normally you would be right, but you're forgetting the healing ability. It makes it where the cells are already heated and set because the healing ability is created from. Kakashi's eyes widened as he realized and said, so you're saying the energy of the Kyuubi is what saved her? Jean said, and Naruto. Had it not been for that, then he would have died at the age of 3. Apocalypse screwed up when he let Naruto fall into our hand. Now you need to get some rest. You will need it when you talk to your daughter when she awakens. Don't expect a warm welcome, but don't give up hope either. As long as there is life in you, fight. Kakashi nods and Jean leaves, and he walked over and set the scroll beside the bed and said, I am sorry Tenten, your life was better without me in it. The loss of your mother, my sensei who was your godparent along with his wife, so many friends, and my duty as an Anbu made me see I would not have been able to be a parent for you that you would have needed. I thought the orphanage would have been better than me, and after I could get out of the Anbu I stayed in it hoping to someday die, so that way you would not think you had a coward for a father but someone who went on a suicide mission and died protecting you. I hope you never have to make the decision I did. As he kissed her forehead and sat back down in the recliner chair. Several minutes later he was asleep. As his snoring went through the room, a hand slowly reached out and took the scroll and pulled it close, holding it tightly, and Tenten sat up slowly as she opened it and read. Dear Tenten, if you are reading this, then I have passed on. I am sorry for not being there for you as you grew up, and I hope that someday you will find true happiness. I thought I was in love with a man once who at the time did not love me, while I ignored a man who loved me and I did not love. The man I did not love one day died protecting me and gave a final gift to the man I love. Your father. That gift was an eye, and it showed him that things in life are not always what they appear to be, and that sometimes you have to give in and take a chance. The chance lead to you being born. I don't know how good of a father he is to you, but he does love you. I know this is hard for me to say because I love you so much that it hurts, but the pain of crying over what you lose won't make it better. Sometimes the best thing you can do is let go. I know this does not make sense to you, or perhaps it does, but I just want you to know that whatever you do in life, I will always love you. I want you to find someone who makes you feel like living life to the fullest and hold on to them until the end. I could tell you more about your family and your history, but it's not worth it. I let go of my past for my happiness and I never regretted it. I hope you can let go of the past of not having me and move on to true happiness. Love your mother, Rin. Tenten let tears fall from her eyes and she went to wipe them away. She then looked at the man in the chair beside her bed and then laid her head back down and went back to sleep. End flashback. Tenten was now in the danger room with Magneto and said, "Is that the best you can do? Come on." Tenten growled and held her hand out as liquid metal formed into a kunai in each hand as she began to throw them. Soon shurikens, sei, and senbons mixed in. After around 40 minutes she was sweating and panting and Magneto said, "Good, that's enough for now." Tenten nods and said, "Thank you, Magneto." Magneto nods and leaves and Kakashi walked in and said, "So how are you doing, dear?" Tenten looked at him smiling and said, "Fine, how's the nuts?" Kakashi said, "Okay, I admit I deserved that the first time but the rest of them was cruel." Tenten smirked as she closed her eyes and all the weapons she made turned back into metal and slid across the ground and re-entered her body. Kakashi said, "I will never get used to that." Tenten said, "I think it's cool. I mean, these nanites as they call them respond to my mental commands and form into any weapons I chose. They also store and create chakra in each cell so I can absorb some of them back into my body when I am running low on chakra and get a small power boost. Gambit's been teaching me how to use a staff, Wolverine's been teaching me how to use claws, Magneto been teaching me how to create weapons on instinct while he restricts their movements with his power so they increase their build speed. Plus I like this." As her fist turns silver as she walks over to what appears to be a building and punches it, sending an entire wall crashing down as she changed her fist back and said, "It's just like my idol Tsunade-sama super strength." Kakashi sweat drops and thought, "I got off lucky." Flashback. Kakashi was sleeping in the recliner chair when an exploding tag went off behind his chair as he jumped away from the explosion looking for danger only to be kneed in the nuts as he fell to the ground and saw Tenten standing there looking at him and said, "That was for my fist, stepdad." As she kicked him in the stomach and said, "That was for my first cut." As she kicked him in the nuts again and said, "That was for my first birthday." As stomped on his chest and said, "That was for my first day at school." As she kicked him in the head and said, "That was for my graduation." As she kicked him in the nuts and said, "That was for my first crush." As she picked him up and looked at the man who was holding his face and nuts clearly in pain and said, "This is for me." As she kissed him on the head before kneeing him in the nuts again. Tenten stepped back as he fell to the ground on his knees and said, "The past is the past. I am willing to forgive you not being there and give you a chance in my life now. It's a one-time thing and you won't be telling me how to run my life. I will listen to your advice but I don't have to take it. If you can agree with that then you can be my dad. If not then you can go to hell. It's you choice." As she looked at him. Kakashi breathed heavy and said, "Dad sounds good. Now can you get me to a medic? I think I taste my nuts." As he fell to the side. Tenten smirked and said, "Walk it off." As she left the room. End flashback. When Tenten and Kakashi left the danger room she stopped and looked down the hallways and asked, "Has there been any changes yet?" Kakashi sighed and said, "No. Physically he's fine. It's all in his head. Xavier said he's lost in a storm in there and he can't find his way out. Both Xavier and Phoenix have tried to get him out of it but nothing's working." Tenten frowned and walked down the hallway to where Naruto was and she walked in and saw him still in bed looking pale and saw Rogue sitting beside him. She walked over and took his hand and looked at his face with sadness in her eyes and a voice that startled everyone said, "Darkness, darkness, everywhere but no light to guide me by. Where is my light in the darkness?" As they all look to the corner and see a man Kakashi recognizes. Rogue asked, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" The man said, "The name's Reload. I came here to help Echo and to give a warning to Cash." As he looked at both. Rogue said, "You can help my son." Reload said, "Yes but not alone. I will require Xavier." Phoenix, and Cash. Rogue hit her communicator and said, I need the professor and Phoenix to Echo's room now. As she cancelled it, Tenten asked, what is the warning for me? Reload said, wait until the others arrive. I will tell you then. Tenten nodded and Kakashi stood beside her. A few minutes later both Jean and Xavier arrived and Xavier asked, who are you? Reload said, as I said, I am Reload. I came to help Echo out of his coma and to give a warning. I will give the warning first. Cash, the warning is this, something is coming that will make you have to choose between losing someone to save the many or save one that could save many. Both options will be hard. Both can doom the innocent and both can save the innocent. You must choose at that time what is right for you and not the world. Tenten said, I don't understand. Reload said, you will and soon. Now for why I requested Phoenix and Xavier. I also have physic powers and I know how to help Echo out of his coma, but only one of us can enter his mind and it will take all three of us working together to keep it from collapsing while the one goes in. It has to be Cash who goes in, making everyone go wide-eyed. Xavier asked, why here? Why not someone else? Reload said, what we are going to have to do is force him to face his past so he can face Maelstrom. It has to be her because she does not know his past like everyone else here. You already accept him for him. She has not because he has sheltered her. If she can stay strong and prove she accepts him for him, no matter what his past is, it will take all the power Maelstrom has built off of Echo's fears, allowing us to destroy him once and for all. Tenten looked at Naruto and said, I will do it. He saved me, now I will save him. Jean sighs and said, all right, what do you need us to do? Reload went red face for a moment and said, well, I need all three of us to form a pyramid around his bed and Cash has to be in the center of the pyramid with Echo. Tenten asked, how exactly am I supposed to be in the middle of the pyramid? That would be, as her eyes went wide. Reload said, yes, you would have to sit on his lap. Xavier and Phoenix will use their powers to open his mind and I will use mine to send you in and stabilize it. You do have a time limit. If you are not out of his mind before we run out of energy, then you will be trapped forever and die. Kakashi said, Tenten, I know you want to help him, but it's too dangerous. Tenten glared at him and said, this is one of those times I will listen but won't do what you tell me. As she climbed up on the bed and sat down on his lap with a leg on either side. Reload said, once she's in, form a mental link to me and each other. The rest will have to be on her shoulders. She will have to go through it all to find him in the middle of it where him and Maelstrom are battling. Remember this, Tenten. It may be his mind, but your mind is there also, so you can control your own actions. Now let's go. Everyone nods and soon Tenten found herself standing on huge valley with a maze in front of her and a storm in the center of the maze. She thought, here goes. As she entered the maze. As Tenten walked through the maze, she noticed something right away. The left wall was blue and the right was red. It seemed no matter where she went the walls would change to remain the same always. That is till she came to a mirror wall. It had been the first one to change, and when she came in front of it a mirror formed behind her and one on each side. Naruto appeared in the two mirrors on each side. Tenten felt dizzy like the room moved and one Naruto said, you have invaded our mind, why have you come? Together. Tenten didn't know why, but she was sure these two who looked alike were different. Tenten said, I have come to help you, Naruto. Both said, that name is not me, I am too. Tenten frowned and said, then show me the real you. Both said, currently we are equal in your eyes. One mirror will show you the truth. The other is a lie. You must watch both and destroy the lies or the truth. And the end, should you not die first, then you will see the true us. Just then the mirror in front of her showed a woman with red hair sitting in a hospital bed, and a nurse came in holding a newborn, and the woman said, take him away. He's nothing to me. As the nurse stopped and left the room. Then the mirror behind her showed the same woman with red hair sitting in a hospital bed looking frail and tired, and a nurse came in with a newborn in her arms, and the woman said, "Let me hold my son, one last time please." As the nurse handed the child to the red-headed woman, who rocked him a moment and kissed his head as she slowly passed away. Tenten saw the second mirror end, and she walked to the first mirror and smashed it and said, "Your parents died. I know this from my father." Both Naruto disappeared and Tenten started to walk again. After walking for what seemed like hours, she saw another mirror, and like before it formed around her, and this time the one on the right had a set of red cloths while the one on the left had blue cloths. Neither said a word as the front mirror showed the Kyuubi dying at the hands of the Yondaime, who called for Kakashi to bring him his son so he could say goodbye, and the back showed the Kyuubi being sealed into a blonde baby and the Yondaime saying sorry son. Tenten frowned until she remembered what she heard her dad say to Jean when she pretended to sleep. She then walked to the front one and destroyed it. Again both disappeared. Tenten started to walk again when she saw two huge phoenixes fighting in the sky, and she could see Jean in the middle of each one, and one screamed, "Hurry Cash, time is running out," as they continued to fight. Tenten began to run at that time looking for the way through. As she ran, she came to a fork in the path, one to the right and one to the left. The Naruto dressed in red appeared and said along with the one in blue, but Tenten saw that this time one had throwing cards with aces on them in his hand while the other had deuces on his cards. They both said, "To proceed from here you must solve our riddle. You may ask one question to determine who is telling the truth and who is telling a lie. One of us will speak nothing but truth and one nothing but lie. Only one of these paths leads to safety. Chose the correct path to continue. Now ask your question." Tenten leaned forward in thought and smirked and said, "If you were your opposite, which path would he say leads to safety?" Both said, "The right path." Tenten nods and said, "I chose the left then." As she began to run down it, but she noticed as she ran the walls started to play a child's life. She watched while runnins as he was attacked and beat, and then she watched as he was kidnapped, then experimented on, then feeling abandoned, and then she watched training, school, and then geonosis where his mind snapped. That froze her as she was running and watched it and thought, "My God, I thought the experimentation was bad. How did he come out of it sane? So he did snap. So that's how this maelstrom personality came to be, the one I have to stop to save Naruto." She watched the events unfold and then started to run again. She then saw as he coped with it and then watched as he grew up more and save a girl and then save the mutant world because of his kindness, returning to Konoha, killing Danzo, people beginning to fear him, meeting her, and she watched as she became important in his life. She felt something inside when this happened and she smiled as she saw him surrender to save her, and then she watched as he killed the man who hurt her and she came to the end of the tunnel. When she arrived she saw two other versions of her. All three of them looked exactly the same. All three asked, "What's going on here?" Xavier appeared in his chair and another was floating standing up, and they had rings of energy shooting between them try to force domination. Xavier said, "You must face yourself here, Cash. This is the reason he is called Echo. You must force him to do something that will reveal the real him. As long as he is like you, he can't use any of his real abilities, so you must find a way to fight him, but hurry. The mental battles that we are facing to keep this world from destroying itself is getting too much. Our dark halves are fighting for dominance in us just like they are in him." Tenten looked at the two and all three said, "So one of you is Echo and one is Maelstrom. You are both the same person with different personalities, so in truth I must only defeat one to defeat both. If that is so, then let's begin." As she got into a taijutsu stance that the others matched perfect. She frowns and thinks, "Okay, I have to do something that he can't do." Reload said, "My mind is here also and I can control my own actions, so that means that he isn't controlling this, I am. How do I defeat myself when I can't harm myself? That's it." As she made a kunai appear in her hand and the other two did as well, and Tenten smirked as she turned the kunai around and stabbed herself in the arm. As the other two did, the blades plunged all the way through the arms while Tenten stopped after skin break. The two slowly changed into Naruto and a huge staircase appeared, raising both Naruto into the air, and Tenten started to run up the staircase. As she was running, her own past started to flash past her. All the sadness, loneliness, hate, and joy started to pass as she kept running. Finally, she made it to the top, panting heavy, and she saw Reload standing beside her as a throne rose from the ground, and on each side of the throne was a Naruto, and Reload said, "Good job so far, but you only have about 2 minutes left, so listen closely. As long as there are two here, he will always be at war with himself. You have seen his past, you have been shown the truth. You see his present and know why he is the way he is. Now you must show him his future. Now you must show him who is the real person here. Is it Echo or is it Maelstrom? Who is the one who you have came here to save?" Tenten looked stunned and she looked at both, and she saw one was in red and one in blue, and besides that there was no other difference she could see. She looked and saw both standing on the side of an empty throne and thought, he is Echo but he is Maelstrom as well. How can I choose one when even I am not for sure which one is Echo and which one is not? I came here to help Naruto, but how can I wait a minute, I came here to help Naruto. Not Echo. Not Maelstrom. Both are the same person. Both are personalities of the same person fighting for control of him. It can't be that simple, but it makes sense. Reload looked at her and thought, here is a chance to reveal the truth to him. Only you can do it, Cash, because you're the only one who can look underneath what is shown and reveal what is hidden. Tenten stepped forward and said, "The one I came here to save is you." As she walked forward between both Narutos to the throne and wrapped her arms around the air where a person should sit. Light shot out as both Naruto began to fade away and one started to appear in the center where Tenten was hugging. As he came into view, Tenten saw that he had his eyes closed asleep, and she saw that Naruto was just like Echo and Maelstrom, but where both were either red or blue, he was dressed in white. Reload said after both the other two Naruto disappeared, "It's time, Cash, we have to go." As he touched her shoulder and both faded away. Tenten opened her eyes and looked down and saw the sleeping Naruto on the bed, but she noticed something different about him. She wasn't for sure what it was, but he looked as if he was at peace. For the first time since she met him, it looked as if he was finally at peace. She looked over and saw Jean on her knees panting and saw the professor white as a ghost. She looked back where Reload was but found he was gone. She blinked and said, "Okay, that was weird. And tiring." As she closed her eyes and passed out. Kakashi caught her before she fell off of the bed and said, "I will take her to her room." As he carried her away. After they were gone, Rogue asked, "What happened?" Xavier said, "It was difficult. When we went into his mind, Jean and I were both forced to fight our dark halves again. It was something I had hoped never to do again. I noticed that it seemed to be the case for Echo as well, because there were two of them. The only thing I am sure of is both personalities of his have merged together. What will happen I don't know, but he will need rest, as do we all." Rogue nods as they left and kissed Naruto on the head and whispers, "Get well soon, son."
So how was the video? If you like it, then why don't you subscribe the channel and turn on the bell icon for upcoming videos and upcoming series on the channel. And if you have any kind of suggestion, or if you have if you want to express your emotions or experience on this video, why don't you go to the comment section and tell us about it. So if you like it, then subscribe, share, and watch it once more with your friends. See you later.